everybody.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the wrap up of South Korea. We have David, who is our tour guide, and then we have Darren, who is joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David. Do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah, let me. Azure has been teaching me how to share my screen on StreamYard. So let's see if I can do this. Oh, it looks like I may not be able to. Now it's asking me to log in. So give me just 1 second here.
Sure. No worries. So I've pinned in the chat the link for the main 15 Nations Global Tour. I also dropped in there a comment for y'all for the 15 Nations Global Tour wrap up that's going to be on WikiTree Day. So y'all have that link and click the notifications button so that you'll get alerted when that's happening. That's going to be the last one. I can't believe it's come. It's all.
I know we are now. Yeah, we have one more country to go, and I've talked the last couple sessions and some of the other presentations I've been participated in about our new upcoming global project. So I'll touch a little bit more on that today and tell you where we are at with that. Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff coming up. But halfway through today's presentation, I will be sharing with you our final country for the 15 Nations Tour.
Ooh.
And I think what I'm going to ask Azure to do is to pull up the program because it's asking me for all kinds of codes and it
Okay.
wants to send something to my phone. And I
Okay.
think we're not going to deal with that right
No
now.
worries.
So,
Oh,
so if we
it's
could pull
there.
up the
It's
15
actually
Nations
there.
Global Tour page.
I
Pardon?
see. We have your screen up. Here we are.
Okay. You've got it up there. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got mine down in a little box, but okay. So we're at the 15 Nations Global Tour. If I'm going to scroll down to well, let's just run through the countries we've been through. We went through India, Argentina, Ukraine, Kenya, Haiti, Malaysia, Egypt, Panama, Cameroon, Estonia, Syria, Greece, Luxembourg, South Korea. That's a lot of countries when you read them off all at once. And I've said this before, we had no idea where this project was going to go when we started this. It's just kind of taken off and taken a life of its own, and it's been really amazing to see what we've accomplished. But we are now completing South Korea, country number 14. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we discovered and didn't discover in South Korea. South Korea was a challenge, and we knew it was going to be. Number one, not only do they speak a different language than most of us do, they also write in a different script than most of us do. So that's a huge hurdle on any of the countries that write in the Asian alphabets, Arabic, some of the other, even some of the Eastern European countries, Russian, etc. With countries, if you speak English, you could still usually make out Spanish names, French names, etc. But Korean is a challenge. So that was one of our first obstacles. And then secondly, when you get out of the Western world, out of Europe and U.S., Canada, Australia, etc., they don't view genealogy the same way that we do in the West. So the records are different. The genealogical information is different. So we're really starting from scratch when we go to these countries, figure out where do we begin. And I think ultimately after 3 weeks, South Korea just proved to be a real challenge. We were able to find parents, siblings, spouses, sometimes of the people through online biographies, that kind of thing. But for the most part, we were not able to connect most of the individuals. The other piece of connecting is you can only connect to South Korea if you've got other South Korean profiles on WikiTree. And if you don't, you need to find links through their family lines to other countries, and preferably Western
Yeah.
European or related countries. And South Koreans are a little more isolated than some of the other countries that we've done, where there's a lot of intermarrying with Western individuals from the West. We didn't find that so much with South Korea, particularly among what you might call the common folk, the everyday people. Some of these notables come from peasant backgrounds, or at least not the most prominent of families. If you're talking about prime ministers, kings, et cetera, you're more likely to get um, intermarriage with other cultures. But people that grow up in a village where their families lived for centuries, you're not going to find the infiltration of other nations so much. But we did get three connected, as you can see right here. The first one, Emperor Gojong was the last emperor of Korea, and he actually already had a profile on WikiTree. So we got him connected by finding the profile that was already on WikiTree. The reason we didn't find it initially is because it was written in a different language than we were searching under. Um, if you look at his name, um, you've got you've got his birth name, you've got his emperor name, you've got his Korean name, and then you've got it all written in English and or Korean. And so what we put into the search engine to find his name was not necessarily what the prior um, profile builder had put in, and so we didn't get a match. But once we did get the match, he had quite a bit of connection, and I believe he has 1,032 connections on his CC7. So he was quite well connected on WikiTree. So that one we didn't spend a whole lot of time on, but the next two are somewhat rather interesting stories. Go back here. Okay. So now this is another challenge I want to just point out to people, and it's something that as we move into the global project, I'm going to try to address and see what we can get fixed up here. But Koreans put their family name first and their given name last. But if we do that in the boxes that are provided to us on WikiTree, then the given name gets represented as the last name, and that becomes the searchable name and not the family name. So it creates a bit of a challenge as to what we put where, and we're going to have to figure out a final resolution for that pretty soon. But you'll see that his name is written Jaipil So or So Jaipil. It's just a matter of how we're entering. Are we doing first name first or first name last? But he ultimately came to the United States, changed his name to Philip Jayason, and that makes things a lot easier. So if we call him Philip Jayason, we don't have to deal with all of that the name confusion. But his story is really rather intriguing. He was born in Korea, and had he was a bit of a revolutionary. He was also a scientist. He he was he wanted Japan out of Korea, which was a big thing. Japan had occupied Korea for some time, and they were not very kind to the Koreans. So he was quite outspoken, and as were his parents and his other family members. And when he was a young man, um, there was a coup that he supported, his family supported, and the coup ultimately failed, and his parents were executed for their role in the in supporting that coup. His wife also, relative to that incident, wound up committing suicide, and then his 3-year-old son died. So he lost his family in a very short time, and at that point, he fled to the United States. He fled to the United States. He went to school. He married an American woman. And through that American woman, let me go up here to let's see here. Go into my connection here, and you can see he married Muriel Armstrong, and from there, we were able to connect to the American family. We've got here going back to Los Angeles. So even though he was born in Korea, lived much of his life in Korea because his wife was American. We were able to connect him pretty quickly. But here's the other piece of the story that's interesting. He went on to become a physician, and he was the first Korean physician in the United States. And he also became an American citizen and was the first Korean to gain American citizenship. So he's got a couple significant pluses on his record that make him a really interesting character. And then we have Sigmund Rhee. He's the third one we connected. Sigmund Rhee was the first prime minister of Korea, and I don't know a whole lot about him, but from what I've read, he was not necessarily the uh, kindest of leaders. He kind of ruled with an iron thumb. So there are people, from my understanding, that highly revere him as a Korean hero, and then others that feel he was uh, really not a very good guy. So I won't weigh in on that. I don't know, but I've read mixed things about him. The interesting thing about him is that he went to school in I want to make sure I'm getting the right country here. Yeah, he went to the United States he went to school in the United States. He went to George Washington University. He got a Master of Arts degree from Harvard University, and then gained a PhD from Princeton University. And while he was in the United States, he met an Austrian woman, Franziska Domer, and she and he were married. So here's our Western connection for Sigmund Rhee, was through his Austrian wife. And he's the one that I wanted to show. If you go to the my connection, if you look, you've got Sigmund Rhee, you've got his Austrian wife. I am 62 steps removed from him. That's quite a bit. But if we go to number 30, number 40, I'm sorry, number 39, Joseph Farrell. So 39 direction or steps from him, we're still in Austria. And then we get to a private individual, and that private individual is a WikiTree member. So she is 33 steps from Sigmund Rhee, and from that WikiTree member, who is private, so I'm not going to reveal who it is, but from her to I is another 30 steps or so. And that's how I connect, is through our fellow WikiTree member here. So that's pretty cool. But as far as doing the research on Sigmund Rhee himself and connecting to our WikiTree member, we had to go 39 family steps to get there. So it's a pretty amazing task that the team was able to follow that trail for that many generations or for that many steps.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Darren, did you want to say something?
No, I didn't actually work on him. I think Paul did.
Paul did that? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
pretty
Paul,
sure it's Paul that was doing.
Paul's in the chat
What's
room
working?
there, but yeah, Paul does amazing work on these individuals. So those are the two. We connected 3. One of them, as I said, was already connected, but we've got 2
we connected
that
4.
We got 4.
Yeah,
Who is our 4th?
down the bottom.
Okay, let me.
Nam Jung Pyuk. Oh yeah,
Oh yes, we did. Okay, I forgot about him. Namjoon Park.
yeah. I
He
know
is a
about
little
him
bit more
because
modern. He was
I
born.
connected him.
You connected him. Okay, you may want to talk about him, but he's a little more modern. He was born 1932, died in 2006. You want to tell a little bit about how you got him connected?
Yeah, I was looking on Wikipedia and saw the wife, and then saw that she had another husband, and
Hmm.
I can't recall his name offhand, but he's alive at the moment. So I had to talk with David and say, hey, how do I do this? Because I didn't want to have a live celebrity on my watch list, but we got it sorted out. And then went from him to his parents, and then went to Lithuania, and we met,
Where we've already
and
been.
we connected to a violinist.
Hmm.
So I'll just pop the link to this violinist in chat as. Oops, no, it didn't work.
Yeah.
No, it's not working.
So again, the key was to get out of Asia and over to Europe, where we're more familiar and have easier access to the records. But our goal is ultimately, as we build up the global project, is we're going to get more South Korean and other national profiles online, and so we won't have to rely on going over to Europe. But at this point, that's really for most of these countries, that's what we have to do.
Wow, he's only 26 degrees away from me.
From you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was an artist. He found, and this is out of my realm of expertise, but he was the founder of video art. But he also is the person that coined the term electronic superhighway. So he's got a little claim to fame there, but I'm not real clear exactly on what video art is. I mean, I can
Yeah, it
guess in my
looked
head what it
interesting
probably is, but
when I
pardon?
was it looked interesting when I was looking at the Wikipedia pages at
Mhm.
a few other pages, but I wouldn't be able to describe it either.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I saw images and it's really cool looking, but how it's actually defined, I'm not quite sure. Um, but wasn't it, if I recall, didn't he have a brother-in-law who was also a famous video artist that we connected through? If I
No,
recall, there was another notable video artist in his tree, which is
his
not
wife was a
uncommon
video
when somebody.
artist.
Pardon?
The wife was a video artist.
The wife was?
Yeah,
Okay. But if I recall, there was a divorce and she married a second video artist as well. So there were a few of them
uh,
in there. So, but these people hang around in
yes,
circles, um,
uh,
so that's not surprising.
yeah.
Well, it looks like his so his wife's second husband, his mother,
So
and then her brother was a violinist,
yeah.
famous violinist. So
yeah,
that's
so his
interesting.
wife I've shown up here. We don't have much info, but she is also a notable. And there were a couple others, and I'm not recalling the trail, and you'll see we've got a lot of the Korean writing in here as well, which is cool. Yeah, so this is his mother's, who's also listed as a notable. I did not work on that. Well, let me pull up here her Wikipedia page, which is in Korean, but let me translate it. Um,
Huh.
and it comes up as the White Camel, and I don't know. Baek Nak-seung was a South Korean businessman during the Japanese occupation. He's the father of video artists Nam June Pike, and the main building is a water source, whatever that means, but that's a bad translation of something.
Yeah, definitely a bad
So,
translation.
so he's got a number of. So that makes it easier when you've got people that are famous. It's a lot easier for us to access those records find out their relatives and so on. So the more notable people we have in a chain, the easier it becomes.
Good Austrian
And
records.
Paul said it was good Austrian records, and yeah, that's again the European records. If we can get into the European records, we got a good chance of making our connections.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's South Korea. I don't think. I mean, I'm actually impressed that we got 4. I'm not disappointed with those numbers, and I really wasn't expecting to get a whole lot of connections here. Again, just because we don't have a lot of South Koreans on WikiTree to connect to, and I didn't expect most of these people probably had easy Western connections to find. So I'm not necessarily disappointed or surprised with the low number. But we're gonna, as always, we're gonna keep this up here indefinitely. So at some point, somebody may come back, and as we grow our WikiTree community, maybe we can ultimately connect some of these individuals. Okay, so we are now at the last country of our 50 Nations tour. It's a little bittersweet. It's been fun, but it's been 15. What is that? 45 weeks. We've been working on this. That's a lot of weeks. Actually 42 because we got 3 more to go. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've been asked by a couple people, where have we missed? Where have we not gone? Because we're going to 15 different regions of the world. So what region have we missed? And this one's going to be a little bit misleading because you're going to think at first that we've already been to this region. But the way the United Nations divides up the world into 15 units, 15 regions, this region borders a country we've already been to. So we are actually going to a country that lies right next door to one of our prior countries, but they are considered 2 separate regions. We are going to West Africa, and we are going to the country of Nigeria, which lies right next to the country of Cameroon. And let me pull it up here. Oops, sorry.
I've added the link to the chat, and it's also
the link. My link isn't quite working the way I want it to. Okay, here we go.
It looks like it's still unlisted for us.
Okay, here we are. We are in Nigeria. Again, Nigeria lies right next to Cameroon, but they are considered 2 separate regions of Africa. I tried to avoid doing Nigeria because I didn't want to have 2 countries that were right next to each other. I had hoped to get a country further away, but as has happened with some of our other regions, I went through every country of West Africa trying to find one with 15 qualified notable people, and I just couldn't do it. The only country that was large enough and had a long enough history to provide 15 notables was Nigeria, and even that got a little bit. It was a little bit of a close call. There's some that were I had to eliminate some for various reasons, but I did come up with 15. So we've got our 15, and we've got some pretty interesting ones, I think. Nigeria will also be interesting because it is a former English colony. They speak English, so and they've been around quite a while as a nation. So we'll see. We'll see how easy it is or not to connect this nation. But based on my experience, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Azure.
Yeah, can you open the privacy on it? It's still locked.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can do that real quickly.
And Paul says that's nice. He's excited about Nigeria.
Yeah, I like Nigeria as a country, as a choice, and I don't think it's going to be quite the same as Cameroon was. I think they've got
go back, David.
enough histories that
you're on your own profile privacy.
Yeah, I got to switch over to. I thought I had it here, but okay. I'm working with 2 different screens, so forgive me.
No worries.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. Open, and there we should have it.
There we go.
Okay, so Nigeria is now open.
Yep.
If you don't have a link or you forget the link, just go to any other country, change the name to Nigeria, and it'll take you there. As always, we've got our history here. Kenya was a British colony from the 1850s. It remained a British colony until the 1960s. So we've got about 100 years worth of colonization. And as we've seen with countries like India and other British colonies, the records are currently held in Britain, in London. So that may be the case with Nigeria. I don't know. Nigeria does have a national archives. They do have a national library. I'm going to scroll all the way down because I believe I don't have the links here, but I do have links that I'll be adding. So, I don't know what kind of records they hold. I was doing some work on Afghanistan the other day, and they also have a national archives, and they have 400 books in their archives. So not the biggest, not the biggest resource. So national archives can range quite quite extreme from one to another. So we'll see what we get there. But again, I think we're going to do well with this one, and it'll be a good one to close out our project. So again, they became a country in 1960. Since then they've had several different government formats. They've had some coups. They've had the government restored. Right now, they are a republic. They consider it the third Republic of Nigeria because this is the third time that they've made this attempt to operate as a republic. But they've been fairly successful so far since 1999. So we're talking 24 years. It's succeeded. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with their future. So let's go through our notable Nigerians. This is always the fun part.
Hey.
I usually don't select anybody prior to 18 or that didn't live in the 1900s. So they might have been born in the 1800s, but they were at least alive in the 1900s. I made with exception this time. Nada Asmau is a Falua princess. Falua was, I believe, the largest tribe in Nigeria. And she was a poet and a teacher, but she's kind of considered a national hero, and particularly for women. She was somewhat of a feminist all the way back in the early 1800s. And the reason I went ahead and picked her, even though you would think, Nigerian records in the early 1800s are not going to be easy to come by, because she was a princess, she's related to the royal family. And there's a lot of, if not primary research out there, at least secondary research that I think we'll be able to pull from and get quite a good family tree up there for her. So I went ahead and made an exception for her and went a little earlier than I normally do. The rest of our notables were all born in 1900 or more recently. The second one, as people that have followed me also know, I try very hard to represent as many women as I can. I think they have really fascinating histories and they often get overlooked. This next woman, and these names are a little bit tricky, but Chief Funmilayo Ransom Kuti. Her real name is Abigail Thomas. That's a lot easier to say. It's not the name she went by. You can see on the screen now, I'm not going to pronounce it, but this is her official name. She was not my first choice. My first choice was actually her son, who is a notable individual himself. He went by the name Fela Anikulapo, and he was a famous Nigerian musician. And originally I had him up as the notable, but when I discovered his family had a number of prominent people and that his mother was also notable, I chose to represent the female family member as our notable this time. So we're going to get 2 for 1 with that. And actually, if the family. This is going to be another one. I think we're going to get potentially dozens of connections within this family, and some of them also notable. So that'll be an interesting
Yep.
one to do. So I mentioned that the government has gone through several different iterations. This is Namid Benjamin Azikiwe. He is was the first ceremonial president of Nigeria. So he was not elected president. He was appointed by the first independent government. So he is considered in Nigeria to be the first ceremonial president, not the first president. And we'll talk about the first president a little bit down the road. But I chose him strictly for his prominence as the first ceremonial president. The second one is the first prime minister, who turns out to have also been the last prime minister, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. I read these and they make sense in my head, but then I say them out loud and my tongue gets twisted. But he was the first prime minister of Nigeria. In 1966, there was a coup. He was abducted. His body was found on a deserted road 6 days later, and the military took over the government. When the Second Republic replaced the military, they chose not to have a prime minister. So there has never been a prime minister since. So he is the one and only prime minister of Nigeria. After him, now I mentioned I have a hard time coming up with 15 notables. I usually try to make my notables as diverse as possible. We're not going to have quite as much diversity this time. We're going to have a number of authors. And the reason for that is because Nigeria's history, modern history, is very recent. They don't have historic figures who were actors, artists, astronauts, sports heroes. They do currently, but they're all still living. But finding kind of pop culture type notables from Nigeria, just wasn't happening. But I've got 4 authors of various sorts this time around, and they've all got interesting stories of their own. But again, normally I wouldn't choose 4 authors, but I had not a lot of choices to pick from this time. So Amos Tutuola was a famous author, but he was primarily famous for writing stories about folktales that had been handed down to him from earlier generations. And so he's quite important in Nigerian literature because he is an individual who preserved the historic tales of his people. So rather than writing original stories, which he may have done of some, he primarily focused on, again, almost as a historian, preserving those stories. So that's a really key role he's played in Nigerian literature. We're going to go back to politics for a minute. We have Shehu Shagari. He was the first elected president of Nigeria. So again, we had the first ceremonial president. This is the first elected president. And again, I chose him strictly because of his position being the first president. I thought it was important to have him on there. We've now got another author, Albert Achibi. He is considered probably the most important Nigerian author. He wrote a book called Things Fall Apart back in 1958, and that novel is considered by many to be the most important African work of literature, modern African work of literature. It's something that's studied in many schools and universities, and he is often referred to as the father of African literature. So a really important figure in his field. And interestingly, right after him, we have Flora Nawapa. Flora Nawapa is considered the mother of African literature. She was a poet and author, wrote a lot about feminist issues, but she is the very first African woman to have her works published in English. So also holds a key historic role there. Now this individual next is interesting. When I was a kid learning about the globe, there was a country called Biafra. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Biafra doesn't exist anymore. Biafra has been absorbed by Nigeria or taken over by Nigeria. But it only lasted from 1967 to 1970. I was a little surprised to learn that because I do remember that country. But this individual here is he went by the name Emeka as a single name, and he was the one and only president of Biafra. He was exiled after Biafra was taken over by Nigeria, and he went to live in London. And so we very well may be able to find some London resources. I don't know because I don't do the research in advance. I don't know what his marital status and his status as far as children goes. But I imagine if he was in exile and he had children, that they most likely went to London with him, and there would be a good chance that they're somewhere along the way that they have Western connections. So that may, if we're lucky, that may be an easy one to make some connections on. Okay, Tony Allen. Tony Allen was a musician, and he was one of the founders of what's called Afrobeat. Afrobeat is a combination of traditional African music combined with American jazz. So it's a unique musical style. But the interesting thing about Tony Allen, which I didn't know until I had already selected him, is that he was part of a band, and I'm going to go back here. He was part of a band that was led by Abigail Thomas's son, who we already talked about. Right here, Abamiida or Fila Anikulapo. He was the head of the band, so those two were connected as well. So we've kind of got. It's interesting as I find 15 random people to find out that they were so closely connected to each other. We then have this is kind of a sad story here. We've got Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken Saro-Wiwa was an environmentalist. What he cared about most was protecting the African, the animals, the plants, the environment. As a lot of the industry and stuff that has come into Africa over the years has not been real healthy for the planet. So he was an outspoken environmentalist. Well, that was fine until there was a coup and a dictator came into place. And dictators don't particularly care for people who make waves, including environmentalists. He was arrested on some trumped up charges, and he was hung basically as a traitor to the country because he spoke up. And I believe he was 54 at the time. But he has a number of relatives who were also environmentalists and also outspoken. I don't know if they qualify necessarily as notables, but there's a lot of material online about his family. So again, he may or may not be easy to connect. But kind of a sad story. The guy's doing a really noble job of protecting our planet and gets executed for it. The next person is another author. Her name is Bucci. A lot of these individuals went by a single name. She went by the name of Bucci, and she was a children's author, but she spent a good part of her life living in London as well. So again, having not done any research, I don't know, but she lived to age 72, died in London. So she very well may have family that continued in London in the West. We now get to the current president of Nigeria. As I mentioned, they don't have a prime minister. As people know, I always put the current prime minister and president of the country on our list. So he will be the only living person that we have to deal with. The rest of our notables are all deceased, so we don't have the privacy issues. And I will get his I see his profile is locked here. I'll get it unlocked so that people can see it. but he will be our only living notable this time around. And then we have two athletes, both who died relatively young, just of unfortunate causes. Rashidi Yakini, he's considered probably Nigeria's top football player historically. He played actually for 7 different countries over the course of his career. He participated in 2 World Cups. He is the first Nigerian ever to score a goal in a World Cup game. He is Nigeria's all-time goal scorer, and he was also at one point named the African Footballer of the Year. So quite a prominent role in sports. And again, he passed away. Let me double check here. At age 48, so not too old. He was coaching, I believe, at the time. And then Sunday Bada was an Olympic sprinter. He participated in the 2000 Olympics and was part of the team that won. They actually, and I don't remember all the details of this story, but the United States won the gold medal in one of the relay races, and for one reason or another was disqualified. Nigeria had won the silver, but they were promoted up to the gold medal. So he is one of Nigeria's few Olympic gold medal winners. And he also died relatively young at age 42. The interesting thing about his death that I'm curious to read about is that he died at the Lagos Stadium, which is the capital city. I don't know what he was doing at the stadium and why he died there. So I'd be curious to find out what that story is, if he was participating in an athletic event or some other role, but I did not have a chance to pursue that. So anyway, there we've got our 15 notables. I think a number of them are going to have fairly quick connections to Europe and the West. The records are going to be in English, so that's going to make it easier. They likely follow a British system of record keeping since they were a British colony. So we're going to have a number of things working to our advantage. And we're going to have a hard time breaking our record, which was in Luxembourg, where we connected 14 of our 15 people. But maybe we can get pretty close, and who knows? Maybe we'll get all 15 with our last attempt. So there we have it.
Yep.
That's exciting.
Yep.
Great job.
Definitely looks good.
So let me, as we come to our final few minutes, let me just touch bases on the global project. I'm going to go ahead and share with people. I'll give you a sneak preview of what we've got going. Okay, so this is our global project proposal page. This is a work in progress, so this will probably change by the time you see it. But let me show you what we've got here. We've got a alphabetical listing of every country of the world. We've got a few other things listed here before that. But right here we have our top tier projects. So these are all the projects that already have, or all the nations that already have an active project going, and those will continue hindered by our project. But for everybody else, we will now have a WikiTree page for every one of them. So right here you can see the list of the A countries. Let me scroll down a little bit. You can see here some are bold and some aren't. If it's bold, that means we have the page completed. If it's not, that means we're still working on it. And as you can see, we have now all of the A's completed. So let me just start at the first of the alphabet with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country that I imagine most people don't know much about how to do genealogy in Afghanistan. And either do I, but I know more now than I did a few weeks ago. Here's our Afghanistan page. If you have Afghani relatives, ancestors, if you're helping somebody out that has Afghani ancestry, or if you're just curious, if you're doing maybe a notable that's from Afghanistan, come here and we're going to give you as much information as we can. We will eventually have a specific project leader assigned to this page, and they will help it grow beyond the initial template we have here. So let me show you some of the things that we have. We're going to give you a little bit of geography. We're going to tell you where it is. We're going to tell you what its largest cities are, and we're going to tell you how it's divided into subdivisions. So Afghanistan, for example, is divided into 34 provinces. We don't have it here because 34 was a lot, but some of them that have smaller, 10 provinces, 15 states, whatever. We actually list them, and you can link directly to information on those individual provinces. Have not got that up for Afghanistan yet, but eventually we will. We have a link here where you can go to Wikipedia and learn more about the geography of Afghanistan. We're going to give you a real short history that helps you tell, particularly when countries were occupied by other countries, when they've changed names. We're going to give you a little bit of a history and then provide it in the form of a timeline so that if you find out that your ancestor was born in Afghanistan in 1930, you come here, you can see that in 1930, Afghanistan was actually a kingdom. So it tells you, kind of what the structure of that country was. Down to demographics, we're going to tell you what ethnicities you're going to find in that country. We're going to tell you the languages that they speak, and we're going to tell you the religions that they practice. These are brief little blurbs, but they give you an idea of what to expect. If you want more information, we'll have a link to where you can go to more information on languages, religions, etc. We also have the Google Translate tool that you can click on if you need anything translated. Scroll down from there. This is a really big one, the Afghani naming conventions. I mentioned this with South Korea. Not only do we want to explain to you how their names work if they're different from what we're used to in the West, but we also need to figure out how we're going to enter these names into the limited boxes that WikiTree provides us. Once again, I'm going to try to work with some of the WikiTree team to see if we can maybe make some adjustments, but those kinds of technical things get really complex sometimes, so I'm not sure what we can and can't do. But in the meantime, we need to, as a team, be able to figure out if I have an Afghani name, it doesn't follow Western naming conventions, how do I enter it into the boxes? And that's something each team will help decide as we go along. Then we get into my favorite part, which is the notables. I'm going to provide you with the heads of state. In Afghanistan, we have two. We got the Taliban in place now in Afghanistan, but we've got a supreme leader. We've got an acting prime minister. I will discuss the monarchy for every country that had one or has one. In this case, Afghanistan used to have a king, so I placed the last king, the most recent king for each country or queen. And from his profile, you can link back to all the prior royal heads of state. And then we get to the notables. Usually I pick between 5 and 10 notables. They may be connected, they may be not connected. This is not a challenge, as we've been doing in the global project. This is just to say, hey, look at some of the important people who come from Afghanistan, some of the things that they've accomplished, and visit their profile, and let's see if we can get them fixed up, looking good, etc. It's not necessarily a connection challenge. So on some, you'll find 5 notables who are already connected. Others, you'll find 10 notables who are not connected. If you can connect them, great. But again, we want you to go in and see if we can find more family members, get more sources, clean up the profiles, maybe find some additional pictures. Afghanistan was one that it was difficult to find a lot of notables who were deceased and qualified for the purposes of our project. So again, I go between 5 and 10 with different countries. And then there's a link here, I'll click on it real quickly, to our category page for Afghanistan. So anybody that has an Afghani tag on their name, and these are mostly all written in Arabic, but anybody that has a tag is going to have a be on the category. So there you can find more notables to work on. And then we've got the Afghani resources. We've got Wikipedia, Family Search, Ancestry. Family Search has an Afghanistan genealogy guide. Ancestry has no information that I could find on Afghanistan. Cindy's list didn't have Afghanistan, but they have an Asia and the Pacific category that might be helpful. For those familiar with World Gen Web, that used to be a pretty big website. It seems to deteriorated in recent years, but they've still got some information up there. They did not have one on Afghanistan, but for most countries they do. The Library of Congress has information on almost every country. So I got a link to their Afghanistan page in their African and Middle Eastern reading room. And then unfortunately, Afghanistan, with the craziness that's gone on there over the last many years, does not have a national archive or a national library that is active online. But they are the only country so far that I found that doesn't have a national archives and a national library. So I will be providing you links to those whenever I can. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but let me just show you a couple of the other pages. We've got Andorra here. Welcome to Andorra. It follows the same format. You've got the geography, you've got the history, timeline, demographics. Scroll down, you've got Andorra is interesting. If people aren't familiar with that country, they do not have their own leader. They share two leaders, two co-leaders, the Prime Minister of France and the Bishop of Urgell. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. And then they do have a Prime Minister. So there's a Prime Minister, and they are considered co-princes, the co-prince Bishop of Urgell and the co-prince President of France.
Yeah, we're not seeing your screen. We're just
you're not seeing my screen?
We're still seeing the Afghani section of the
Oh,
page.
that's interesting because I see it on mine. Let's see.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know
Okay.
we're still back on the Afghanistan.
Okay, so you're still on Afghanistan now?
Yeah. But
That's interesting because on my screen I'm seeing it. So let's see.
Yeah, we could hear
Okay,
you
well,
all
people got
talking,
the
but
idea. Unfortunately, we're not seeing it, but
well, you're breaking up.
it's going to be the same format for every country. And again, we will have 195 countries up when we're all done. So wherever you're from, or wherever you have an interest, you'll have a place to go. So the reason I'm bringing this up now to this particular audience, we've had some volunteers come forward already, but if anybody would like to adopt a country, I do not intend ultimately to be running all 195 projects. So I'm looking for volunteers. We've had several come forward already and claim countries, but if anybody is interested, it's people ask me, well, what does it involve? That's really up to you. If you'd like to take over a country, we'll try to get a team together for you, and then you and your team will be able to take it, whatever direction you think it needs to be taken. So, the Notables Project and myself will provide you with guidance and backup and support, but we're not going to be micromanaging or interfering with the project. So if you're interested and you want to adopt a project, send me an email, and if that country is available, which the vast majority of them are, we'll get you hooked up and show you what needs to be done. The project itself will be open on January 1st. Some of the projects, the individual countries, the managers, the volunteer managers have gotten in early and gotten things going. So they may be starting their individual country projects early, but the page itself will be opening on the 1st of January.
And
Okay.
I've added a link to the WikiTree Day presentation on the global project that'll be going on, so that people can turn on their notifications to get alerted to that too.
Yes, and I was going to mention one more thing regarding WikiTree Day. We are going to be doing our Nigeria wrap up on WikiTree Day, so it's going to be, I think it's actually a week early. We will not necessarily wrap up a week early. We'll still continue to work on Nigeria, but for various reasons tied in with the global project, we've been asked to do our wrap-up show on WikiTree Day.
Yeah, and that's linked also in the chat.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
And I post this all on G2G. Those that are on Discord, we have a real active. We're kind of quiet on G2G anymore, but we have a real active group on Discord. So if you're interested in, even if not participating, if you just want to peek in and listen to the conversations on how we're figuring out what we're figuring out, it's really pretty fascinating to see how our minds work. But that's mostly on Discord. G2G will give you notices. We'll put the links into various events and stuff, but we've pretty much transferred all of our chat over to the Discord channel.
And there's the link to the Discord help page if you're not already on Discord. That's the help page on how to get set up.
If anybody has trouble with that, email me. I know sometimes if you're not used to a particular program, Discord or G2G, etc., it can be a little intimidating, but yeah, just send us an email and we'll get you set up. And once you figure it out, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us.
Yep.
We got 3 weeks in Nigeria ahead of us, and I'm pretty excited. I think this is going to be good. And I will also be sharing with you at our next wrap up on WikiTree Day how we're going to fill the rest of our year, because we have about a month and a half with the holidays. So most of us will be busy, but some of us will have a downtime. And I do have some ideas of how we can fill the time between the 15 Nations Global Project and the opening of the new global project.
That's great. So the next live cast that'll be airing on WikiTree's channel is going to be on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's the Hacktoberfest, the 4th week. So tune in then for that. If you've clicked notifications for the channel, then you'll get notified of that. And I think that's everything. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Hey everybody, we'll see you all in a couple
Nice
weeks.
to see ya.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.